you're only as good as what you do and how you affect people. Like that is it. And if you walk around high and mighty, you're not going to achieve anything. You're not going to realize, how good you can be at anything. And the real athletes, they don't want special attention.
Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. Todd Durkin, your host here, and I am so fired up for today's episode because I have a great friend on the show today, someone I've known for a long, long time. Now, we have a lot of commonalities besides both being strength coaches. We both hail from the same hometown of Brick, New Jersey. I have the head strength and conditioning coach for the University of Miami Hurricanes football. Coach Dave Feeley is in the house. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Todd, man. It's so good to see you and hear your voice. What's going on?
Are you in Coral Gables right now?
You know it, 80 degrees, baby.
80 degrees, and we are recording here in January. And guys, if you have not met Coach Feeley before, if you have not watched Miami Hurricanes football, let me give you a little bit of a background. I'll let Dave tell you a little bit as well, but he's had one heck of a run in his 15 seasons of now as a strength and conditioning coach in football primarily. He's had stints at Ball State, South Carolina, Temple, Miami, and of course Brick High School as well. And he's got an illustrious career. This is his second year down at Miami, and you're in for a real treat because Dave has done some amazing things with his athletes at all of his stops. Very unique, cutting-edge techniques, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about performance and what it takes to really get to the next level, whether you're an athlete, regardless of your level, or if you're a fitness enthusiast, weekend warrior. Coach Feeley is going to give you some of the things that he's doing to help you get to your next level as well. So, Coach, you fired up today?
You have no idea. Yes, sir.
I like hearing that. Now, before we go into Miami and talking about Hurricanes football and all that you're doing down there, I want to go back to where you all started.
Oh boy,
Brick. What was it like growing up for yourself in Brick, New Jersey? And how the heck did you go from Brick to Miami?
Very small steps. A lot of really great small steps. It's funny. In 1996, I'm gonna date everything right now. Sitting in the small gymnasium, and I see this blonde-haired quarterback-looking guy rolling through, the little auxiliary gym, going into the weight room with the old wrestling mat, rusted York plates. So who's that guy? That's Todd Durkin. I was like, well, he plays quarterback. Why is he lifting so hard? And then I was like, wow. After that, I got the stories and whatnot. And, we both had the same great strength coach in high school, Donovan Brown, and he got me started with everything I'm doing today.
Well, we were fortunate back in high school to have Coach Brown because I remember, as a freshman in high school, cleaning, squatting, benching, and we were getting after it. We had our different, the Iron Dragon Club and the different awards. And I remember I loved getting in that weight room, and it'd be like 120 degrees in that closet. I mean, it was a small, I don't even know, 400 square foot closet. And we got some serious results then. But I even look back at some of the things that Coach Brown did, and we were blessed to have a coach like that at a young age. And I know he set the trend for you as well. So after high school, what happened next?
So on my high school graduation, it was really funny because I had met you face to face, and I found out what you did, and I thought to myself, man, that would be great. He's working with people, he helps people, and all I kept thinking about was my high school experience, with Coach Brown and how much he poured into me. And I had met you right on my graduation.
What year was that?
1999.
1999. So what was I doing in 1999? Do you remember?
Okay, so you had gotten your massage therapy license.
Yep.
You were, I believe, in San Diego at the time.
That's right.
And I think you were training people on the side, and it was a year away from when you first opened Fitness Quest 10. I think that was a year or two away.
That's a heck of a memory because that's exactly what I was doing. I had like 5 jobs. I was in grad school. I was getting my ATC hours at the University of San Diego. I was a adjunct professor at Cuyamaca College here in San Diego. I was doing personal training on the side, and I was flipping up my mattress doing massage therapy at my apartment. I had 5 jobs working 7.5 days a week. So I'm shocked that you still remember that. Fitness Quest 10 was not even born yet. Well, it was it was getting ready to be born, but it was those 5 jobs that allowed me to ultimately form that in year 2000, 20 years ago. So that's a heck of a memory.
I will never forget it. And then, as time went on, and I went to Ocean County College to start my college experience. And then I asked Bill Kleisler, our very good friend and one of my mentors growing up, he's like, hey, you should go out and visit Todd if this is what you really want to do. And right when you opened up Fitness Quest 10, you were still doing a personal training class at a gym, a small gym. And you actually asked me to give somebody like some manual resistance on lateral raise. I think I killed the guy. And he and it was really early, dark and early in the morning. And then, you had your classes at Fitness Quest 10, and that small area upstairs on the top of that shopping center, I was like, look at all these people. He is cranking out sessions left and right. This guy doesn't sleep. There's no way. And then your little office up in the front there. And I'm like, look at all these books. And I was sitting there reading through your dissertation, from your master's degree. I'll never forget that. And it was a pretty neat experience.
That was the Hilton Beach and Tennis Resort in Mission Bay, where I continued to train people in Open Fitness Quest 10 because I was scared to give those people up because I had no clients at Fitness Quest 10. So I still trained at the gym down there, which is about 20 minutes away. And the office that you're recalling, I'm rather impressed that 20 years later, you remember that office because after about 2 years, that office went extinct. I got rid of the office and took all the books home because we needed a little bit more space. So keep the story going. Keep moving forward.
So, I went home and I said to myself, that is definitely a field that I have to get into. And I had transferred out. I went to Plymouth State, which is up in New Hampshire. I studied physical education. And I didn't know whether or not it would be I wanted to go in the private setting, being college strength coach, or be in high school. And high school was pretty much my wheelhouse, my comfort level, because of, all my experiences with Coach Brown and obviously playing for legendary Coach Wolf. And I had, had a great experience there. I lifted really hard. Played football for 4 years and got to play O-line. I was captain my senior year. I had a fantastic experience. And that's where I really found how hard you can work and how far it could really take you. Because, being every bit of 5'8" and playing on the O-line, you get a lot of crooked looks, to say the least.
I love it.
So I went back and I became a phys ed teacher for a year. And my first strength job was at the high school setting was actually with Bill Brunner with the women's track team, with the throwers. And those 5 young females, that was one of the best experiences of my life. And I said, wow, I can really do this. And then I started helping out in the weight room with football. And I said, you know what, I'm going to get an internship. So I went down to University of South Florida for the summer, got an internship, got a GA at UNLV right after that. And Bill Brunner said, this is what you need to do. You need to go to UNLV and you need to do this. We'll always be here for you, but you need to go be a strength coach. And Bill Brunner was really he was the catalyst of me saying, you know what, I'm out.
But step back, because I remember that was a very big decision for you because you had moved back to your hometown, Brick, and you were coaching and doing some teaching there, and you had found something you loved, but had a calling that was maybe even a little bit bigger, a little different than what you thought you were going to be doing. And I remember talking on the phone then, and you saying, "Well, what should I do?" And based on what Coach Brunner had said and listening to your gut, you decided to then go out to UNLV. That's a tough decision.
Yeah. Oh, it tore me apart because,
right.
You finally got your first job out of college, and then, it's a good teaching job, and you got a side job to go along with it. And that's the road of many teachers. And now I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to give that up to make about $800 a month and be a graduate assistant across the country.
It's great to look back because sometimes you forget the path that you've traveled and how decisions back then can form who you are today. Here you sit, in the offices at the University of Miami, head strength coach with the Hurricanes. You think back just 20 years ago of, man, should I leave this job? And not that one job is better than another, but how life would be different if you didn't take that GA position at UNLV, because I remember even there you had a mentor at UNLV who helped cultivate some of your philosophies and methodologies as well. So keep going, because this is an interesting story and it only gets better.
I'll never forget when Anne Marie, who was my girlfriend, I proposed to her in Vegas and we got married and have 2 beautiful kids. We were sitting, as soon as we moved to Vegas, and we're sitting in Rubio's restaurant. I'll never forget it. And I'm sitting there, and my entire body just got like a real fuzzy, warm feeling. I said, "Oh my God, I just left my job. I have to make this work. Like there's no turning back. There's no safety net. There's no family here. I know nobody. You've got to make this work." And I think that was one of the best experiences of my life. Like, you find out what you're made of when you're all by yourself. And obviously I wasn't, I had a partner in crime, but it was just us, and there was no choice but to make this happen and get my master's degree and get great experience. And, one of my became my mentor, John Greco, taught me so much about the strength and conditioning business in college and how to deal with athletes. It was an invaluable experience. And it was just he and I for football, and I was a GA. I wouldn't trade that. And I had other sports too. I had baseball, I had softball, I had track and field, and I was taking classes at night. And, I discovered coffee there. It was great.
Don't you think sometimes you do your best work when you sink or swim? You're all in. Like, here you are at a restaurant. You're like, I've got to make this work. And if I don't, I'm going to fall flat on my face. I'm going to fail. And I think sometimes in life, that's when you do your best work, when you are most desperate. And I always say, like, when you're finally making it, you got to keep that same attitude, that same mentality, that same grind, that same grit that you had as a GA when you're finding your passion. If you can maintain that when you find a certain level of success, it's that mentality of, I got to make it. I got to make it. And that mentality of, it's up to me. If it's going to be, it's up to me. If it's going to be, it's up to me. How do you keep that mentality all the time? And that's something I think that for you and I been ingrained in because of the blue collar town that we came from, and both having played for Coach Wolf and that tradition that fostered. But it's a mindset that now it continues in my head, and I know in your head as well, of like, hey, if it's going to be, it's up to me, and I'm going to lead this program, this team, this organization, this business to a championship level. So to fast forward real quick, what were some of the stints all the way to Miami?
Oh gosh, so UNLV, I spent 2 years there, and then I had went to FIU for 2.5 years, and that's where I was. I had baseball, I had softball again, I had tennis. I taught 4 classes. And I assisted with football. So my day was, it was 7.5 days, just like you put it. I get that. That's what it was. And every one of those teams got the best treatment they possibly could have gotten. You went to every game and supported every athlete. And then I did an internship at Rutgers when I was in college. And that internship under Jay Butler, he worked with Pete Lembo, who was the head football coach at Ball State. That Ball State call to Jay Butler at Rutgers says, I need a guy. We're at Ball State and we're understaffed. I need a guy that can do a lot with very little. And Jay Butler said, I have your guy right there, Dave Feeley. And he's at FIU, and, he's an animal. So I got a great recommendation to Ball State, had 5 great years there. I saw an entire graduation cycle from recruiting to graduating in 5 years. That was beyond rewarding for me to see that. And those are guys I'm incredibly close with. From there, I went to become the head assistant at South Carolina with when Coach Muschamp got the job. And that is still a step up, going from a MAC school going to the SEC. I spent 1 year there, and then I went to the AAC and became the head guy at Temple for 2 great years. And it was cool because I was back home in a sense. I lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is, you just take Route 70 from where you and I. It's crazy. I lived the same distance from Route 70 on the west side that I did on the east side. It was down to like 0.1 miles. It was crazy. And then from there, Coach Diaz got hired at Temple. And then as soon as the transition happened from him coming out of Miami, he brought me right down.
Well, I remember that phone call as well, when you were at Temple and you were happy as a clam. And Coach Diaz gets hired, and then next week he takes the job. He gets hired at Temple, and then a week later gets hired at Miami and offers you the job at Miami. And you're like, TD, I don't know if I want to go. I'm like, Dave, go. Like, go. Hey, I know you're close to home, but what an opportunity to be at one of the leading institutions in the country, one of the top most storied football programs in the country. You got to take this opportunity. And I know that was gut-wrenching for you. And, folks, as you listen in, think back about some game-changing decisions in your life. That was a game-changing decision in your life, because here you are at Temple and you loved it, but you were still trying to climb that ladder. And the opportunity down at Miami now certainly is one that's really opened up a lot of doors also.
Yeah, when he had called, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna leave home. Like, you get real comfortable when you're home now, and you haven't been home. And and I'm sitting there, and we prayed about it, and I talked about it with Anne Marie, and we both came to the conclusion, like, we were supposed to meet him, and that was a real, and that was a real big thing for, like, when we started talking about that, we were supposed to meet him, and this was supposed to happen. And I really believe that when you're comfortable, you're at your worst. I think you need to live more uncomfortable. Like, it's got to be at least 51-49. You've got to be uncomfortable, and you've got to get out of your comfort zone, or you're never going to find out what you're made of or how far you can go. You get comfortable, like, you better have a real nice job that you're not going anywhere for a long time. Because if you want to stay on your toes, and you want to be the best you can be, you got to be on high alert, and you've got to. There were too many positive things going on.
You say get comfortable being uncomfortable all the time, don't you?
Every day. So, and there was a reason why he had called, and there was, it's just like, what, home is great. It's always going to be there, but the school is great, but the person's even better working for, like that's the person you're working for every day. Like you sign up to be the best servant for that head football coach as possible.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk Miami football now, because here you are, you're going into your second year down at the University of Miami. You're in Coral Gables. You go from Temple, which had built a solid tradition down, up in Temple. Now you're in Miami, where you're getting some of the nation's top recruits, some unbelievable athletes. Now I know you've established some pretty crazy routines and traditions, because I've seen them on ESPN, I've seen them on YouTube, I've seen them on social media, and I see these folks like, dressing up in Hulk suits and squatting 500 pounds, and some crazy strength coach behind them firing up, like literally foaming at the mouth. Can you talk about some of the traditions that you've established at Miami, and of course some of the other places you've been, that is allowing you to create a winning championship culture?
Well, the one thing that we'll do is when guys are going to max out, they have to go through something called the tunnel of pain. And really what that is we actually throw them out of the weight room. We tell them, you have to go through a set of doors, right? And usually they're clear glass doors. We'll line the players up in like a gauntlet, like a running back drill. And it's like they're trying to grab the ball, except the player is just running to his rack. And we have whatever chant it is, or whatever school you're at, like that's what, and we the you, like that's one of the chants that we'll have in the weight room. And you literally jump up, kick the doors open, and they better be running in like the Ultimate Warrior. Remember that we were kids? Like, you better be running through them, because they're going to slap the heck out of you. And then they're screaming and hooting and hollering on the rack. You hit your max, and we have a hurricane siren that they have to crank up. And you blow the whistle, they're like, ah! Yeah! And it's one of the best environments you could ever imagine to be. And we actually had like a real, like, really cool photo shoot. Like, if they had to earn the right to get a photo shoot with chains and sledgehammers and whatnot.
So let me ask you something. It's called the Tunnel of Pain.
Tunnel of Pain.
So here you show up at Miami. You got a bunch of All-Americans. You've got young men who've been entrenched in a certain philosophy and culture and strength and conditioning. And then here comes this crazy strength coach introducing the Tunnel of Pain, dressing up, going nuts and crazy. How was that accepted? Was it accepted? Was it not? Did you have to, you're trying to establish some different habits and cultures down there. Was it accepted right away, or how did you do that?
The first time they looked at me like I had 5 heads. And then the second time we did it, they kind of understood, like, hey, this is kind of cool. And it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And if you can create an event and not just the mundane, like there's a time and a place for the meat and potatoes and whatnot, but you put a little special A1 sauce, it gets you right here, it gets you right there, you need that, and you need to make it fun. And we're putting them in positions where they're celebrating their teammates' success. And if that ever gets old, I'm done, or they got to stop playing, one or the other. Like that has, like, you have to connect and invest in people, and that will never get old. You just have to maybe change what you do a little bit so it doesn't get mundane. But people want that. They respond to that.
Well, I think you've done an amazing job with the enthusiasm, the energy wherever you've gone, because, I look at that energy and enthusiasm. I'm like, wow, that is contagious. That's electric energy. And truly, when you look at the young men that are doing it, they are fired up, and it has now become a phenomenon on YouTube and even ESPN, because I know it's highlighted pretty much every season when you do this, because people are doing some amazing things. Another thing I saw that you do that is truly unique, and let me just say game-changing, pioneering, is I read an article on ESPN, Dave, that even on game days, you're doing some things that have never been done before, like you're doing some basic lifts on game days. Can you elaborate on some of that? I saw that you were bringing like hex bars out on the sideline and doing some things. What's that all about?
So the funny thing is guys go out for pregame, and that's where they go and warm up, which is in my mind completely backwards, because you want to feel great going into pregame and leaving pregame. So every time that they come in and work out, and when one of my mentors, Coach Al Miller, great strength coach, he would tell me that before a lift, you want some back flexion and extension. You need some single leg loading. If you can, do some overhead squats with a PVC pipe, or we bring out bars to do it. It's not debilitating to do. And, we'll bring out some foam rollers. We don't want them to do a lot of it. We'll bring out some bands for some lateral resistant work and whatnot. But, the whole goal is to get back flexion and back movement. You need their glutes to wake up. That's the insurance for your hamstrings. When you activate that, now they can have a great pregame. And that will wire them. You want to start fast, have a great pregame. Then they're ready to go. You don't want to warm up during pregame. That is completely backwards. You're trying to establish timing right away with your quarterback if you're a receiver. Well, if you can't run right, you're not warmed up to run, and you're not loosened up because you didn't do any reverse lunges and open up your hip flexors, and you're able to tap your toe at the bottom of that, which will activate your glute and release some pressure on your patellar tendon. And what are we doing? You've got it in our minds. You have to do those. And it literally takes 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. They like to do it. They do it every day in some way, shape, or form before their lift. So it's a comfort level that they know they're preparing their bodies to play football.
Well, I would say that's revolutionary, because I've never seen a team at any level, including the pros, doing that. And I actually love it. I think it makes a ton of sense when you talk about activation and everything from the barbell overhead squats to some of the hex bar deads to the lateral resistance movements that you're talking about. It makes a lot of sense, and I commend you for thinking that through and not being afraid to change that, because part of it also is getting your athletes to believe that, hey, when I'm activated, physically activated, I'm going to perform at my best, because physiologically you actually are doing that. So that makes sense. Strength-wise, overall, if you could just talk about in high performance, what are some of your most important lifts that you're using as part of your program in the off season? I hope you're enjoying this episode. As a matter of fact, before you hear the rest of the amazing story, let's hear a word from one of our sponsors. All right, my friends, today's episode is powered by a tool that I rarely do a workout without. It's called MyZone. MyZone is a heart rate monitor that tracks your heart rate, your calories, your percentage of your max heart rate, and something called MEPS, which stands for your MyZone effort points. I want to know, how hard are you working in the gym? And what's beautiful about MEPS is I can test if you're working as hard as my pro athletes, or if the grandma or the grandpa or the young kid is outworking you. Never get outworked, because you always want to be the hardest worker in the room. The other aspect I love about MyZone is it's an app that gives you a great visual when you're doing your workouts. Based on how hard you're working, you're either in the gray zone, you're in the blue zone, green zone, yellow zone, or the red zone. I love the red zone. The harder you work, the more you get rewarded with your MEP points. That's why it's called MyZone. Heck, we even have a MyZone scoreboard at Fitness Quest 10, and I encourage all of our clients to wear their MyZone belts so we can monitor their workouts and If they want to compete, they can compete a little bit also. Lastly, within the MyZone app, you can friend people and follow their workouts, send them messages, and even have contests. And I love to compete. Heck, I encourage all of our people to follow me and see my workouts on the MyZone app, and I'll follow you back also. My MyZone app name is TD10. Pick up a belt today at www.myzone.org. I know you're going to love it, and if you're like me, you're going to want to wear it in all of your workouts, and you're going to hate it when you forget it. Check it out today and get one. myzone.org. Get in the zone. Get in MyZone.
We keep it really basic on what's important to us. We're big on heavy overhead squatting, because that cleans up 90% of your mobility issues anyway. And that's pretty standard across any kind of mobility screening exams. We'll heavy back squat, and then just depending on how heavy a skill guy would go compared to alignment. And, we're looking at body weight, body mass, relative body weight, absolute body weight. And then we'll, your bench presses, but your power cleans are pretty important as well. We'll do, any kind of posterior chain. We can't stress that enough. That is super important to us. And as much as we can jump our guys, we'll do that as well. And everything else will kind of take care of it. You have to hit the entire body throughout the week. It's got to happen. They're not going to get tight as long as you keep running them and you keep the full range of motion of lifts. But the overhead squat, the clean, and the bench, like those are things. And that's what we're living at.
Now, the U has always been known for its speed. What are you doing to make sure that you could take all of your athletes and make them faster? Beside the lifts that you're doing, are there any specific things that you're doing on a weekly basis to ensure one's top end speed?
Oh, absolutely. Well, acceleration wise, that's so important for receivers. We definitely work on their first step, and then we're working on, with that first step, what's their knee and shin angle looking like, and you've got to film it, and what you got to show them is that, are you internally rotating your leg and moving your ankle out? Are you in line when you're running? And it's done bit by bit with a lot of them, because they want to move better. The better they move, the more power they're going to be able to express. Mm-hmm. So when they're coming off the line of scrimmage in a drill, how do they look? How flat is their back? Are they triple extending on the drive, on the down leg? Are those things happening? And with the top end, and we'll have sled pulls, we'll have partner resisted and then released, like a belt or a towel. Even if you don't have a belt, use a towel. Use a really long towel.
Right.
And we'll do a lot of overspeed work here, which they absolutely love. We use GPS systems here, and in December, it was 10 days to the day after our last game of the season. Overspeed wise, we ran 30s, and we had 21 speed PRs from the summer.
Jeez.
On the team. They couldn't get enough of it. And they're competitive now. They will go. They don't even care if they did legs. If I'm like, we're going to do some tempo running afterwards, and all you got to do is say, hey, let's just try to hit 17 or 16 miles an hour. We don't have to go that fast. All they do is look, you're slow as you know what, and then they go. They go. So it's pretty cool.
In addition to overspeed, how important do you emphasize flexibility, mobility as part of your overall program?
We tell them, if you can't bend, you're of no use to us. You're just going to get yourself hurt. Mm-hmm. That's why we overhead squat every day. We stretch every day. You have to do those things. We do hurdle mobility work 2 to 4 times a week. That it has to happen. You've got to, like, and we don't sit there and stretch for 5 straight minutes. It's always, we'll do a dynamic movement and then we'll stretch that specific muscle. Because if we were all in Africa, we'd be a steak to a lion, right? So if you got a frozen steak, you can't move it. If you're cold, you can't bend the steak. So you've got to be able to get blood flow. You got to heat the muscle up, then you can stretch it. And that's kind of how we go about our dynamic warm-ups. Mm-hmm. Stretch the muscles. Got to do it.
How about the other side, nutrition? You talk strength, you talk speed. When it comes to nutrition, what are you telling these athletes? Now, here they are in college, obviously. They have I'm sure, meal service, and the athletes down at Miami, I'm sure, have great food. But what would you say are maybe 2 or 3 of the most important things that college kids, athletes, should be doing to fortify their nutrition and performance?
Number 1, they need to eat breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number 1 thing. And that sounds silly, but some guys want to get up, and we have we have a variety of food and bars at our facility. Because if the guys come in and say, they come in for a morning run at 5:45, well, there's not breakfast available in most places, in America at 5:45, unless you're going to McDonald's, but they're rolling through the door. They have to have something small in them, for just to have some fuel. So, and if they don't, and they come in for like a 7:30 lift, they've got to have some sort of breakfast with some kind of complex carbohydrates, and they've got to have protein, but they've got to have some sort of fruit or vegetable in that. And that sounds silly, eat your veggies and whatnot, but we educate them on how many vitamins that they'll get per fruit and vegetables. Now, we'll have some powders where it'll be like a veggie powder, and you'll get all your vitamins from that. But the other thing would be snacking. Like the supplement, that's easy. And supplements, really, they came up with supplements. The root of it is to supplement your food intake, not to replace it. Mm-hmm. So we teach them that they've got to eat. You can have your supplements only after you eat, but they've got to snack throughout the day. The snacks are key, especially going to class. And we tell them, if you go to class empty-handed, you're wrong. You have to be snacking on some kind of peanuts or some kind of protein chips or something at all times.
Yep.
Because they work so hard, they'll just lose weight.
And then right after their workouts, are they typically consuming a whey protein shake, or what kind of recovery shakes are you feeding your athletes?
Oh yeah, the whey protein, that's the most basic part of it. And we'll have a variety of either dairy, or some guys, if they don't have dairy, or some guys are vegan. We'll have a wide variety of vitamin shots that we'll put in those. We'll put a variety of fruits in there as well. Big chia seed operation in here as well. And the shakes are catered to the caloric needs of each athlete. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if you have a real heavy lineman and he doesn't need to be too heavy, he's going to get a little lighter shake.
I love it. Hey, Dave, what's the best part of your job?
The best part of my job, without a doubt, is impacting people. That is the number one. That's why you get in this. Everybody originally gets into this. I want to help somebody because somebody helped you. That's got to be the root of it. I'd love to know another explanation. That is just it. Like my bills are paid by helping others be the best version of themselves they can be. That's a beautiful thing. I don't even call it, I don't know what you call it. I don't know if it's a job, an occupation, a career, whatever.
It's a calling. It's a calling, right?
Yes,
sir. Let me ask you this. Well, how do you deal, because you love working with people and serving people, do you treat your All-American players, your scholarship players, these highly touted 4- and 5-star recruits, any different than the guy that comes on that is undersized, that is a walk-on and wants to be on the team but maybe doesn't have the talent? How do you as a coach treat that player differently, or do you not?
No, not at all. No, they're treated all the same. Everybody's important, because the funny thing is, just on outside of the playing field, they might be best friends off the field. Mm-hmm. And if you treat one of them differently, they're going to go home, sit on the couch playing video games or hanging out and be like, yeah, coach was on me, but he wasn't on you. And then the person that gets the better or special treatment, he's going to turn, that's not right. Why is he picking on my guy? So you already have a morale issue. And the funny thing about the actual ball of football, that ball doesn't care who you are. It could care less. And that's a lot of society. Like you're only as good as what you do and how you affect people. Like that is it. And if you walk around high and mighty, you're not going to achieve anything. You're not going to realize how good you can be at anything. And the real athletes, they don't want special attention. They don't want special treatment. They want to be coached, and they want to be treated fairly. They want you to be honest with them. But
what would be one thing that you would say you learned at Miami so far in the time you've been there, with like maybe the biggest lesson you've learned, or something you said, an aha moment in the last couple of years you've been down there, in your entire career? What would be that one lesson you've learned in the last year?
That it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you're coaching, because, there's like a stigma in Florida that the kids are different, or maybe even different in Miami. And I've heard that across, the country or whatnot. It's an insanely competitive area. But at the end of the day, my aha was, they just want to be cared for. They want to know that you have their back and you can help them get better. You're invested in them, and they'll do anything for you. And I love it. I can't get enough of it. I could coach these kids forever.
And Coach, what would you say if there's 2 or 3 things that you're doing now that you weren't doing even a few years ago? I know we talked about maybe the warm up, but is there anything else you're doing today that you wish you would have known, 5 years ago when you're at one of the other schools? Like, man, if I only knew then. Or are there any technologies that have come along in the last few years that you're now integrating into your program that have been like godsends? Like, wow, this is really a difference maker. Anything to share of note?
Well, I'll say this. I'll go technology, and then I'll go the first
Okay.
question. But the GPS system that we use, it's Catapult system. It is invaluable to us, and I've learned so much about how hard and how often to run our guys. And if you can explain to them, be like, listen, you need to run at 85% or more your top speed X amount of times throughout the week, and we've got our formula. You're not getting it, Todd Durkin, not today. But and we had from an injury standpoint, we didn't have a soft tissue injury the whole year that a guy missed a play for.
Wow.
So they're buying into that aspect. I mean, that's a real stat. And but they put the work in to achieve that. But and then learning if an athlete gets injured, what that shows you is how hard right or left somebody can cut, how hard they can accelerate or decelerate. So if they hurt their knee or hurt their ankle, and you're just a coach and you're watching with the eye of the coach, which does rule all, but you don't have any substantial data to back it up. Like, you know what? Todd's right leg can't fire off or can't drive as hard as his left leg. What's going on? There is an issue. The body's not lying.
Right.
He might lie to you and say, Coach, I'm good, because he's a competitor. But there's something wrong, and you've got to get to the root of that before it becomes a real issue. And I can't get enough of that. And you pull that athlete aside and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. We're going to get it fixed now.
Yep.
Who doesn't? They're eating that cereal with a serving spoon. They can't get enough.
So GPS, and what
else? Meeting with your athletes more. I'll tell you, and I believe this, that with the age of social media and how accessible phones are, I don't know how much interaction kids are getting these days compared to 20 years ago, when they had to interact and you couldn't hide in your phone or dive down in there. And you don't have to pick your head up for 3 hours. You don't even know who's around you. And with that comes lack of social interaction, and maybe it's it turns into confidence, or it turns into just life experiences, holding conversations with strangers or interacting with your friends more. The more you can meet with your players, or maybe even your clients, if that's the case, and understanding where they're coming from, their why, what their goals are, and then not just once and then, hey, we'll revisit this in 3 or 4 months. No, something could change with them in a day or a week or a month. Yeah. And if you see something, because you'll know them after about 3 months, you'll really know how they walk. You'll know their facial expressions, how they carry themselves, their posture, whatever. There's something always going on, good, bad, or indifferent. And once you figure that out, that's when the meeting's got to be more frequent. And in college, you got 105 guys. Well, guess what? That's the best. Like you said, it's a calling, and it's a lot of people, but you can affect 105 people every single day, good, bad, or ugly. So you better get your butt in there and meet with them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Coach Feeley, this is some tremendous wisdom you're sharing. I got to ask you the question. I mean, Miami football, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You see me sporting the gear right now. Have you met The Rock yet? Has he been down there? And have you seen what The Rock's got cooking? Or is he scared to step into the weight room down there to see what you got in the tunnel of pain?
I didn't say that. I did not say that.
I did.
Part. No way.
I did.
I haven't seen him yet in here. I think he's in the middle of making, I think, 35 movies, so he might be a little swamped. Hopefully he stops in soon. It'd be great to meet him. I
think The Rock's got to get cooking down at Coral Gables right now and see what Coach Feeley's got for those Hurricanes, because you're resuscitating the program back to prominent levels. And I want to thank you for all the knowledge that you're dropping today. And last couple questions. If there's a young coach who's listening today, who's a trainer in a gym, or possibly is aspiring to go into coaching at the college level, what advice would you give that young man or that young woman to get ahead today? And even if it's not in transitioning, maybe it's they want to rise to the top. I mean, you talked about going from a high school teacher and coach to having a dream, going giving up a salary to go back to be a GA, to live and be poor so you could follow your passion. And over the last 15, 20 years, I'll now say have risen to the top of the field. And you've learned a lot of valuable lessons. What would be a couple pieces of advice of wisdom that you would entrust a young man or woman with?
First, you got to bet on yourself because nobody else is going to.
Ooh,
you have
I like that. Bet on yourself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've got to learn what the parameters are and what your field is based on. So, I learned quickly that you have to become irreplaceable. You have to everybody you meet at that job, whether it's in football, it's, how you treat people, it's how you work with academics, because it's all tied in. And this is just my business. And, the trainers, the doctors, the coaches, the operations people, your administration, your the other athletes that walk around and you interact with. You have to become such an impactful servant to everybody around you that if you were to leave, they could not replace you, and they would not be, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they couldn't replace somebody they felt good enough with after you left. That's how much of an impact you need to make on. There's really there's no higher honor, I don't think, in anything that anybody could do than to say, you know what, I wish we had that person back here. They'll never get any better than that. And, you're not doing that. The more you help people, the better will come to you. And everybody wants to be helped. And that'll be your brand soon. And, you just figure out, well, what's my next step? What's my next step? What's my next step? I knew once I was a GA, I had to become an assistant. And the only way, and somebody told me this, it doesn't matter who you know. It matters who knows you, and do they say, will Dave Feeley help us win? And that was it. And it's a daily grind. It's a daily job interview. You're never gonna hit the home run in one day and be reliable. It's gonna be when things are going really good, or how professional are you? When things are going not so good, how are you? They want to see every bit of you. What's your first interaction with people, and then how do you leave? And that'll be their lasting impression on you.
Wow. I love that. Become irreplaceable. I mean, to me, that's being all in. Like being all in, like you said, how you treat people, how you treat your clients, members, customers, athletes, your administrative people. There's a great story of a man who is entrusted by the GM of an NFL football team to go pick up a potential draftee at the airport. And that assistant did that. Well, the athlete did not treat that driver of the car so nicely. It got back to the GM. That GM, as soon as that athlete arrived, cut that person because the athlete wasn't treating the quote driver with respect. And it's not just, who can do you good in life. It's how you treat everybody. And I think that become irreplaceable, Dave, is something obviously you have done so well. It's because you truly, genuinely care about all of the people you work with, and not just the athletes, but the support staff, all your assistant coaches, your superiors. I mean, that's some tremendous wisdom right there. And if you're a young coach, trainer, young professional, heck, anyone for that matter, that's some great wisdom dispensed right there from Coach Feeley on that. Coach, how do you learn today? I mean, when it comes to just your own self, how do you push the envelope? What are you doing to continue to learn? And who are your mentors?
Learning today, I'll use social media to look at some articles that are readily available. I spend a lot of time on the phone, as much time as possible, because you can read an article, but you got to know how the article was applied. So whether it's a knee rehab or a shoulder rehab or hamstring injury prevention, you can read all the data you want. You can, who implemented it and how did they do it? Just remember Indiana Jones growing up, X never ever marks the spot. He's like, but it's never going to be exactly how, there no two settings are the same. So you've got to figure out how to implement that plan. And that's why I spend a lot of time on the phone with people that I trust. And my mentors, Coach Roderick Moore, who I worked for in the past, Al Vermeil, Al Miller, Rob Panarillo, Coach Johnny Parker, which I know I wouldn't be here today talking to you right now if I didn't have that man pouring into me. I mean, that was beyond a blessing. And, you know, and you've been a mentor of mine since 1999, since I met you. And, you know, Billy Kleisler and Donovan Brown, I still lean on them for advice on certain things. So I have I named a bunch of names, but, you know, I trust these people a lot. And the reason I trust them is they'll be very honest with me. So, you know, if I have to learn or I have a question about what I'm doing or how to implement something, everybody on that list will tell you, hey, that's great. Like, dude, what the heck are you doing? Why would you do that? And you know, that's why I value, you know, strongly value that list of people.
Well, Dave, as the legendary Coach Wolf would say, Dave, you're doing us proud. You're doing us proud. A small town boy from Brick, New Jersey, going out and making us proud. So on behalf of Coach Wolf, I thank you for what you do. You are making such an impact in the world, and your words have certainly impacted me as well. And I love seeing what you're doing. I see how the guys are playing. I see how they're reacting in the weight room. I see not only on the field in the weight room, but also the lessons you're teaching them about life at all the stops you've been. Certainly are making a huge difference. I'll leave you with this question. This is the Impact Podcast. When it comes to impact to me is all about legacy. What's your legacy all about? What drives you? What's your why? I want to just end with your statement of what's your impact all about, Coach Feeley?
Well, what I would really ultimately, what I want to be remembered for is, you know, that I always made somebody better. Anybody around me, they always got better. And, you know, that's really, you know, we're all servants in this field. And if they can't say that, then you got to reevaluate what you're doing. And throughout seeing multiple coaches throughout the time I've been doing this, you know, that's the number one, you know, as you know, you can be hard on people, you can be easy on people, but if you're pouring into them and you made them better, then there's nothing better. There's no trophy that you can hold in your hands that'll replace that.
Yeah. Dave, if someone wants to learn more about you, where's the best place they can follow you, see the tunnel of pain or anything else that you may be doing? Or, hey, if we have some new supporters of Hurricanes football, where can one follow you or Miami Hurricanes football?
My Twitter account is @Coach_D Feeley. And, you know, or any one of the Twitter accounts on my ex-players would work too. If you can, you know, ask them like how much fun running many 110s are, or running on the track after heavy squats and, you know, things of that nature. Be pretty good.
And Hurricanes football, is it @Canes football on Twitter?
@Canes football, yes, sir.
@Canes football. Well, I become a Miami Hurricanes fan since you've been there, and I'm excited for the future and all that's going on, because I know you have a huge imprint with all of those young men and the folks down there. So keep up the great work. Anything else, Coach?
Yeah, I you know, and I know a lot of people are listening to this, and you know this, but I can't tell you how much I love you and respect you, and I'm so honored to have grown up in this business with you always on the phone and helping me over the years. I really mean that, and you know, all these people, I really hope they can meet you, and then the lucky ones will get to know you. But I'm very blessed, and I'm not here today without watching you when I was 19, 20 years old, doing what you do and impacting me that way. I believe that. And, you know, throughout the years, and when I was out West coaching, and I'd come by and watch you work with your, you know, crazy NFL clients, and then your regular, you know, walks of life people, and how excited they were. You didn't see an energy level drop. It was the Fitness Quest 10 juice. It was the Todd Durkin juice. It was just, you know, it was amazing. And, you know, that taught me that it doesn't matter who you're working with, you know, that you can create the best environment in the world and make people better. And, you know, I think everybody should know that, and that's real. Thank you, brother.
Dave, thank you so much for those words, man. I'm really grateful for you and all that you're doing, and I appreciate those words. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Wow, that was awesome, and I so appreciate Coach Feeley's words there at the end. It's amazing sometimes when you actually stop and think about people who you've impacted and the directions they've taken in life. Hearing Coach Feeley's story, from him going from a high school student all the way through his own path and his own journey, you never know when and where one of your messages, something you're going to say, how it's going to impact somebody. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed talking with Coach and seeing all that he's doing to create so much impact in all of the stops he's made. I mean, he's talked about a lot: Ball State, South Carolina, Temple, Miami now, UNLV, FIU, and everywhere in between. And when you think about your own journey, what you're doing, remember, like he talked about, bet on yourself. I love that. Bet on yourself and become irreplaceable. Bet on yourself, become irreplaceable, and get the daily wins. All those little things add up. Day after day, you got to show up and be all in. So whatever it takes, you can always come back and listen to this episode or any other episode that really resonates with you. And I wanted to go into the trenches. Here's one of the world's most renowned strength coaches at one of the top universities in the country, leading their football team in strength and conditioning, sharing some of the wisdom that he's doing from a strength, speed, flexibility, technology standpoint, and imparting that wisdom to you, regardless of whether you're a young athlete, you're a fitness enthusiast, you're a weekend warrior, you're a mom or a dad or a grandma, grandpa. It's all about high performance. It's all about that mindset. It's about that journey and what you're doing to get better and better every single day. So thank you for joining me for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. If so, I'd love your feedback. I'd love your comments. Remember, your 5-star ratings really help us on iTunes. If you can hop over there, iTunes, give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. We're almost at 300. We got to hit that 300 mark. We're trying to get to be a top 10 podcast. We need to get that 300 review mark. So if you can hop over, give us that 5-star rating and a review, I would really appreciate it. Until next time, remember, continue to train your tail off. Continue to eat right. And always, always live inspired and create impact.